Excuse me. Do you have a dream? Do you have a dream? What's your dream?
Adam, what is your dream?
That's not what I expected you to ask. I would have said a few years back it was to work with great people doing great things, and that's what I said to Simon when he asked me.
Adam Smith is the CEO and co-founder of Helpbnk. He joined after exiting his first company and was approached by Simon Squibb.
Simon Squibb had described you as the luckiest man in business, right?
The timing of the sale was incredibly lucky, and it's actually how I met Simon. We made the decision to exit at that point, and it was exceptionally good timing. Freedom to me is threefold. If you're starting a business now, it's arguably never been easier because you can access to information is so free.
You've mentioned the Elon Musk quote, which was, "Move with extreme urgency. Someone is right behind you."
Yep.
And I'm interested in just your explanation of what that means to you and what that should mean to founders.
I think
So Adam, Helpbnk has now exploded to over 270,000 people. I'm interested, what was the story that started the platform?
the story that started the platform came down to Simon's reach. He had this ability to reach individual people on a daily basis, and for him that wasn't enough. He was providing help, but on an individual basis. The premise behind the platform was the fact that you could then create scalable help for as many people as possible by creating a central space where people can come, give help and get help on a digital platform that was accessible in every country. The idea that one person helping was a good thing was intentionally aiming to be replaced by a community effort of people helping other people. So Helpbnk motto being helping people help people. The idea behind that is that a community of people globally should be able to provide high level quality help to a huge number of other people, more so than just one person doing that.
Yeah. So for people that haven't heard of Helpbnk, how does it work? Is it that someone can literally log on and ask questions about anything? Or could I go on and give advice? What is the premise? How does it actually work?
So when the MVP started out about 2 and a bit years ago, it was the simple premise to be tested to see whether or not you could ask a question and get meaningful help. That was the really simple basics of it. It's grown with additional features and a different utility now, but that was the premise. And the idea is that you can go on to Helpbnk, get the help that you need, and predominantly it's around business, right? So Simon's background is around business. Yes, you could go on there and ask about anything, and people genuinely do. But the idea is it's predominantly about business. It's about entrepreneurship. It's about building your own freedom and building your own business.
Yeah. And 270,000 people is a lot of people. And I'm interested in the split between people coming to ask versus coming to give advice. Do you have that kind of data?
Yeah, so we weren't sure how it was going to go in the start. We didn't know whether or not it was just going to be a magnet for people who didn't know where to turn, or they needed help in a myriad of different ways. But what was interesting was the number of people coming to actually give help. And I think that we were surprised that I think the split is somewhere in the sort of 85-15 ratio. So 15% of people come to give help and actively and proactively help individuals on a day-to-day basis, and 85% of those people are requesting help. But it's an interesting split because if you look at the numbers, obviously 250,000 people and 15% of those, that's a large number of people who are actually there to actually just give help. When you sign up to Helpbnk, you can actually choose which one you're there to do. You can, of course, choose both, because a lot of people, as you know, in entrepreneurship will not only be able to give a certain skill set and a certain amount of help to other people, and they'll need help along the way in other areas. But yeah, there's definitely that sort of split.
Yeah. And so someone who's listening, who might think it sounds like Reddit, for example.
Yeah.
How would you combat and answer that question for them?
So how do you mean? So in terms of like Reddit is a literally Q&A free for all?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Obviously they're not vetted and they're not there for the same purpose.
Sure.
But it's a forum.
It is a forum. And what we haven't done is deliberately copy Reddit's format. i.e. there are lots of different subreddits and there are I believe unlimited comments and questions. So what we were fairly mindful to do in the early stages is to ensure that the number of comments and the conversing backwards and forwards was relatively limited. People were there to actually give help, and you can comment once or twice. We've changed this now because we found that actually that was slightly limiting, and there's definitely a sweet spot between limiting number of comments and then letting it be a free-for-all.
Okay.
So if you have a number of people commenting on a specific question, then actually a short backwards and forwards on that piece of advice is healthy. But taking it off-piste and doing any number of other iterations of that gets a bit distracting. The premise that we wanted to try and enforce, or the behavior we wanted to try and enforce, was the fact that actually if you ask a specific question, then you get your advice, then ask another question, then you get a specific piece of advice, and that then maintains a continual interaction with the platform over time.
Okay, that's I think it's so interesting. So I guess something that is very relevant to us in the podcast world, which I'll also put to you, and in the owned media world, that Simon must come up as well, is that you've got to be so careful with who you allow a platform to then say something outwardly. You can't just let someone come and say advice, because like we've seen in Direct CEO, you get in trouble where you get back-to-back guests saying the opposite things. They've all got scientific evidence. It becomes a bit of a who do I follow, why?
Yeah.
So how does Helpbnk, when your vision and your mission is to help people get to business advice and build their dreams, how do you vet the advice and who it's coming from to make sure they get the best advice they can?
There's a couple of different factors to this. One is we were very, very mindful from the start not to vet advice as Helpbnk.
Okay.
The idea is it's a community platform. And what we found was that the community would vet itself, i.e. upvotes and likes and interactive behavior on the platform would dictate whether help was helpful. We put in a leaderboard, a scoring platform at the very start. Therefore, there was an algorithm that sat behind it that would try and determine what help was helpful, because it was never up to us to determine what was helpful. The only person really that can determine whether or not any piece of advice is helpful is the person asking the question. So we wanted to ensure that that was as upregulated as possible. And what you find is that those people who give consistently, perceptually good advice by the people asking are the ones that eventually sort of rise to the top. It's almost self-selecting in that way.
Which is absolutely perfect, really, isn't it? Which is exactly what you want to happen.
It's the only scalable way to actually do it if you think about it going across 120 countries. And there also is an element of geographic jurisdiction, right? So if you are a Nigerian farmer, or you are a factory worker in Ohio, or you are a financial services industry in London, the help that you get needs to be relevant to the jurisdiction that you're in.
Yeah.
And the only way to do that Helpbnk as a business could never dictate whether or not those comments were helpful. It had to be community driven. So it had to be then platform driven.
Yeah.
In that way.
How many countries is it in, did you say?
I've thought 120, but it's
120
I believe,
countries.
But maybe I probably ought to get the data on that.
Okay, we'll call it over 100 plus countries. Okay, that's insane. So you're at 100 plus countries, over 250,000 users, with a really cool split of 85-15 in terms of giving versus receiving. What would you say were the key levers that have helped you grow the platform this quickly? Because obviously there's the front end marketing of Simon and his brand.
Sure.
But the platform has to be good for it to actually scale to this number and then retain.
Yeah, it does. I think there's a couple of elements, one of which is the fact that where do you go for help? Where do you go for free help, which is a really key factor. There are so many people online selling courses, and there is questionable value as to how relevant those courses are, or whether they have specific relevance to you. And not everybody, when they're starting out, has money to spend on advice. That then lends itself to the next problem, which is, if it's free advice, how valuable is it? Which is also a factor. Again, I remember Simon hearing that phrase from his book, which is like, if you don't pay, you don't pay attention, which is something he railed against, because he believes that actually, you can get good advice which is free. And that speaks to the previous point, which is ultimately, if you can generate community help, which is self-vetting, then you end up in a position where actually you should get the cream rise to the top and you should be able to get good help. The platform has moved on from where it started, and the quality of help and the retention of those people coming back to the platform has increased. What we found was that the bounce rate has dropped as we've moved on. We've introduced different feature sets on the platform, which has helped retention. There's different things that you can do there rather than just ask a question. And we've learned from seeing the best elements of what we've done and then iterated against those to create a better experience, I suppose.
I think it's such an interesting premise. So I want to take a second to speak about our sponsor, Pith and Stem, who we are thrilled to have on this journey with us. As someone who is always looking for ways to improve my healthy hustle, Pith and Stem's drop-top desk stood out to me as the best full work-from-home solution on the market. The world of work from home is changing, and a laptop or screen perched on your lap or dining room table isn't enough anymore. It's imperative that we have a solution at home that matches our productivity station that we can have in our office. But of course, homes weren't made to be worked in, and not all of us wanted a dedicated study. That's why I'm so happy that Pith and Stem created this perfect solution. They designed this desk with both the needs of the professional and their home in mind. It's perfect because it allows me to have a full productivity station that suits my needs and helps me get the most out of every minute that I spend at it, not only so I work comfortably, but that I actually enjoy it. And the best thing about DropTop, I can close and lock it at the end of the day to keep work and home separate. And it looks awesome on the wall. You can get your DropTop desk anywhere in the world from pithandstem.com, or just Google DropTop and you'll find it pretty quickly. I think I'm right in saying, based on the stats you've just said, that roughly 40,000 people every month come just to give.
Yeah.
Why?
That's what the stats say.
Yeah. So why? What's happening there?
I guess it's difficult to read because what we haven't done is necessarily interview those people to determine why they've come to the platform. But what you do find is consistent people coming back and doing that. I have spoken with a couple of people from those elements of community, and there was one guy I spoke to, as a guy called John in America, and he was a philanthropist. He was a third-generation industrialist in America. He's incredibly wealthy, and came to Helpbnk to just help. Philanthropist at heart, but there's an element around giving some of your time without really an expectation of helping somebody. So why would you give someone money in the street? Well, giving someone a little bit of advice has a little bit of psychological effect on you. If you believe that you've done something with your time that's valuable, with no real expectation, but you see that that person values the thing that you've done, and you can do that consistently, then it creates this sort of effect in you where you're just like, actually, I did something good today. Yeah. And that actually helped. And it doesn't really, we limited the friction that it takes to actually go out and help people. So if you can go onto a platform and actually just help and do it for a short amount of time, it makes you feel good. And it's not the same dopamine response as scrolling, which I will have a whole other thing about. But there's that, I did something good today.
It tells you a lot about a person's philosophies and values if they're willing to go and give their time for free and their expertise for free. I think that's, you're banding together some what must be fantastic people, deeply thoughtful people who want to actually just jump on the whole mission that you guys are all building together.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think a case in point was actually Robin, who I think has been on the podcast, on your podcast. Robin Wade has been on your podcast before. And I know he does a lot of stuff within his own business and helping people where he can. But Robin was an active user from pretty much day one and was consistently in those top few people who were actively helping and helping for free. And he didn't really have an agenda. He was there to brand build to an extent, but he was truly, genuinely helpful and showed up consistently. And there are a few of those that show up regularly and show up consistently. They don't have anything to sell, but they do it because it genuinely feels good and they feel appreciated. And if you can begin to expand that sentiment in a global setting, you have more and more people who will genuinely feel helpful and genuinely feel good about what they've done. And the end result is someone hopefully gets the help that they need. Help at an early stage of business is a really tough thing to find. And I think it's easier now, although I would say it's probably a double-edged sword, right? So you end up having this sort of social media for social good, but you also can get the help, but you can very easily be led down the wrong path, I think. So social media has two sides to it, I think. And
Yeah.
if you follow the wrong people, or you end up in the wrong echo chambers, it can be a real problem.
I completely agree, because this is why I was touching on how do you vet the people, because there's so much information. Information is so free, and so I think it's so important to not only get the right information but be around the right people, because a lot of the systems that we're brought up through, especially in the UK, traditionally now don't get us the results that we are sort of expected to get when we're dumped out into the real world. And I sort of wanted to hear more about your backstory, right? Because you've said in the past that the traditional path nearly bankrupted you, and so I'm interested in you painting a picture of what that looked like.
So I was raised in a family where my parents had careers. My mum stayed home with us as children and then worked when we were at school, which was lovely. I had this wonderful upbringing. But there was sort of this expectation that you just follow the path that everybody else follows, right? So you go and do your GCSEs, you go and do your A-levels, then you're going to go to university, don't really take a gap year, and probably need to go and get a job after you've done that, because you've done 4 years at university where you've specialised in something that's really narrow that you then need to go and actually utilise. So I specialised in chemistry, and specifically organic chemistry. So I narrowed my field down from doing GCSEs through to maths and physics and chemistry, through to organic chemistry, which like narrows your field of what you can do really fast. And then I got a job doing organic chemistry because it was the only thing I was qualified to know how to do. So I spent 3 years at Merck doing research chemistry, designing drugs for Alzheimer's in the labs, white coat, fume hood, the whole lot. And then one day the CEO came over from America and held an all hands meeting in the restaurant and fired everybody.
Whoa.
What had happened was for Merck was that Vioxx had basically been revealed as a drug that gave people heart attacks. And it was an arthritis drug. So you're taking something for a chronic condition, but actually it probably kills you. And it turns out it had killed a lot of people. So they suddenly had a 50% drop in their shareholding, which is the biggest drop of any company on the Dow ever. And they just made mass layoffs. So you kind of realize all of a sudden, you're just like, well, some of these people have been here 35 years, working in that same building, doing these same things. And all of a sudden, it's over. And they've got to go and do something else. So there's no security, there's no safety. It took me one more turn back to industry before I realized that actually there was probably something else to do. And I went back into pharma, I went to GSK. But there was a point at which I realized that this wasn't going to be a sustainable thing that I could do. I was living beyond my means. I hadn't really had any financial literacy training at school, despite going to a good university and getting a good degree. Didn't know how to budget. I didn't know how to go out on my own because I was living by myself for the first time away from home. I was 2 hours away from home. I got an apartment. Didn't need an apartment. I got a car loan. Didn't need that. But I was just like, well, I'm learning now, right? So I need these things. But even you stack all that up, I was spending way beyond my means. And very quickly you realize actually that's a fairly short route to not having any money at all. And I was paying one credit card off with the next across the month. And my dad came down and I said I'd take him out for lunch. And it was the 15th of the month to get paid on the 30th. And I tried to get £5 out the cash point and I couldn't. And he looked at me and was like, "You all right?" I was like, "Not really. I've got no money left." So you have this sort of traditional path where you're like, I did all the right stuff. I got all the right grades, went to all the right universities, and then got the right job. I got no money. So I was like, well, something's got to give. Something's got to change, because those people that have been there 30 years have got like a sliding scale of pay increases going across time, but probably not that much greater than inflation. I need to do something different. So a couple of years later, with a few ups and downs, me and my partner just left the country. We left with a one-way ticket to go around the world with no preconception about what we were going to do next. I just knew I wasn't going to do that again. And when I got back, we started a business. And that business was very, very hard the first couple of years, which a lot of businesses are. Made £4,000 in my first year. My partner was supporting me at the time. She was working at Pizza Express and we were eating cold leftover pizza for dinner. But after a few years, it began to work. And then we recruited and then we expanded. And in 2019, I was able to sell that business and take time off. So there's no way of getting to that scale if I'd stayed employed. I would have stayed employed forever with no break. I was able to take a year off beforehand. I took 3 years off over COVID. But it gives you the opportunity for freedom. Will it always work? No. But if it does work, it gives you a freedom which you won't get elsewhere. You won't get in employment, not unless you, I don't know, go and work in a hedge fund.
It's such a conveyor belt, isn't it? We're all literally put in this conveyor belt.
Pause. Sorry, it's me, Freddie, interrupting myself. I just want to point out how well this guest is doing at building trust with you, the audience. They're adding value, they're giving inspiration, and they're hopefully educating you on a few different areas. You see, we're in a trust recession, and becoming a podcast guest is literally the best way to continue to build trust while so many are struggling. We've built a community of incredible entrepreneurs, all becoming the top most in-demand podcast guests in the world. And if you click some of our links below, not only have we got templates to help you become a top guest, we've also got a community that you can join to get yourself to where you want to be. Thank you so much for listening and watching these episodes. It feels like you're really part of the journey with us. And can I ask you one favor to help us grow even further? You may have noticed that we've been getting some amazing guests on. We've got more listeners than ever. But you can help us continue to give value to you by clicking that subscribe or follow button below. It helps us to show everyone else how well we're doing and therefore give you more value by getting bigger guests and take the podcast on the road. It takes you 2 seconds and it's completely free and it helps us more than you know. Thank you. Now back to the episode.
We're all literally put in this conveyor belt. My parents were both police officers, so no one had been to uni, no one had a business.
Yep.
It was very much get a job, go to uni. Wow, so exciting.
Yep.
Debt, then get a house and pay that off for 40 years.
Yep.
And that is life. And then you sort of look around and start to realise that there's edges to the conveyor belt.
Yes.
If you go too close, you lose everything,
Yep.
which is terrifying. I'm interested in your opinion on where that conveyor belt is wrong. Like where is the biggest problem in go to school, get a job? How can we change that? Because obviously the business that you're in now of Helpbnk and Simon's brand of sort of dreamers is, do you realise there's more? You can do more and we can actually help you. We can give you advice here.
I think it's shifted, and I think the access to information has made the people aware of what choices are available. I started my business in 2010, that's 2009, which is about the same time the iPhone came out, about the same time Facebook was invented. So when I was in those previous careers, this was kind of pre-social media. We didn't have the same options, maybe there were the same options, we just weren't aware of them. I think people are far more aware of the choices that are available to them now. I think that level of information comes with its own concerns. I also think universities change slightly as well. So everybody talks about, you got to go and get a degree, or you did for a while anyway, at least 10 years ago or so. Well, getting a degree makes sense if you've got a specific thing that you want to go and do. If you want to be a veterinary scientist or a doctor or a surgeon, then yeah, you probably want to go to university, because there's a certain skill set that you're going to need to learn to be able to do those specific roles. But if you are unsure or you don't quite know what the path looks like, going and doing a degree now with the debt that's associated with them, and more than that, it's the opportunity cost. It's the lost time of 3, maybe 4, or in the case of architecture, 7 or longer.
My brother's an architect.
Yeah, so it's a huge amount of training time that you could be doing something else with. And I think that the opportunity for knowledge is so available now. You could go and learn something in the space of 6 months that a degree might teach you in 3 years. And then you could apply it as well, and you could learn while you're doing it. Starting out, we didn't have social media. It was pre-2010. So I think there was this, you go to school, you go to university, you get a job, and university's fine if you're training for the right things. But if you're going to university because you don't know what to do next, it can be a real trap. It's the debt that goes with it. It's the indecision and the opportunity cost loss for that time that you're doing something else. There is a social aspect to it, but you know, you can make friends if you put the effort in anywhere. If you're starting a business now, it's arguably never been easier to start a business because the access to information is so free. You can learn in your spare time. You've got access to things on YouTube that you just simply never had before, and you can follow that advice and you can execute really fast. There's still this element of where do you go to get the advice that you need, and I think Helpbnk is aiming to provide that sort of early stage advice, trying to crystallize the idea that you want, supporting you when those ideas don't work, because there's an element of if you get it wrong, it's the end of the world. Well, actually, it's probably not. It's just this one thing that maybe didn't work. Maybe you need to iterate and change it, or maybe you need to change it completely. But a lot of the people I speak to on Helpbnk are like, what is it that I should be doing? Well, what is it you care about? Because if you don't care about what you're doing and you're doing it just for the money, it's a really hard slog. It's doable, and people do it all the time, but it's going to be a lot less fun. So try and do something that at least aligns with what you really want to do. And it goes back to a case in point in my early career. I got myself out of debt by flipping cars on the side whilst I was working in the lab. And that led to me working with cars for an entire career, or entire business, or business life cycle, because it was something I really cared about, something I always enjoyed. Yeah. So do something you care about, and chances are you'll be able to monetize it somehow, because you'll have more passion for it.
How did you know how to flip cars?
How did I know? I did one and realized I made money out of it and then did it again. It was just trial and error. I had a very, very small amount of money, and I was like, well, what's the most powerful car I can buy for the smallest amount of money? And I realized it was like a really old Japanese car with a turbo in it. But I also realized once I got into it, there were forums for these cars. There were like car owners clubs and stuff like that. So what you do is you buy them on eBay, you repair them, and then flip them onto the forums. And for a while there was this small area of arbitrage that you could actually like make some money on, and it wasn't a lot. It was like £1,000 for a car that you'd flip over the course of from here to there. But I did it a lot.
You turned it into a big business.
Well, this was just a side hustle, really. So I was working in the labs at the GSK, but I was buying and selling cars on the forums whilst I was doing it. So I'd get one delivered, and I'd usually get them delivered, and I'd usually get them delivered to my mechanic. Okay. He'd do the things to get it through the MOT and then drop it back to my house. And then I'd just sell it on the forums. And so you could make £1,000 in a weekend if you knew which ones you were buying. And because it was a really small niche, like a really, 3 years worth of cars produced in the 90s.
Okay.
So it was really narrow, but it was a niche I knew exceptionally well. I knew the parts on the cars, I knew how to take it to bits, I knew how to put it back together again, I knew the electronics, I knew where to get it from, I knew what car was worth what when I saw it, and I knew what it'd be worth when I could get it somewhere else. So,
but how did you learn that part? Were you just interested in cars?
Just interested.
Yeah.
Okay,
cool.
It was again, it goes to that passion piece, right? If you're interested in the thing that you want to do, then chances are you're going to learn more about it. You're going to spend a bit more time on it. You spend your spare time on it. It doesn't feel like a chore. But I love that aspect to it, and I think I had 14 of them over the course of about 2 years, and we would just turn them and buy the next one.
But you turned that was what you turned into the business, right? Which we'll get into in a sec.
No, that was just a side hustle.
Oh, that's a side hustle.
That was just a side hustle whilst I was working.
Okay,
but because it was cars, it then led into the business, which was then actually repairing cars professionally.
Oh, I see.
So that was just like, well, I like doing that, so let's make a business sort of out of it doing over here, and then that did really well.
And then, so to your point about how businesses change or how information changes. Now, if you look at people like Matt Armstrong, the YouTuber guy who does cars, if you had just filmed that whilst you were doing it in 2010, you'd have millions and millions of followers, and that's what now the internet wants.
Exactly. And again, this comes down to the options. People have more options to monetize in different ways. So you could build a business now, and the main source of income wouldn't necessarily be the business itself. It could just be people watching what you do as a business, which is an incredible opportunity for anybody doing anything. And the content obviously follows that.
Yeah. So what do you think it was from, I'm really interested in the business, right? The car business. What do you think was the main thing that you learned in that business, which you then brought or are currently bringing into Helpbnk to help it grow?
To help Helpbnk grow? The biggest aspect that I learned there is people. In so many different ways. I ran that business and I had to wear all the hats, like every entrepreneur does at the start of their entrepreneurial journey. You're doing sales, you're doing marketing, you're doing cost control or analysis or credit control, and actually delivering the service as well for many years. I was actually doing the work before I actually eventually was big enough to be able to hire people to do that. But all of it is people, and business is people. So from your customers who you interact with to the employees who you have to take under your wing, or at least I did in that business, because good people doing that job were very hard to find, and even harder to retain. It was all about how you interact with people, how you make people feel comfortable and safe in what they're doing, how you get the best out of the people that are working around you, how you maintain your customers. And I said to Simon at the very, very start when we started talking about Helpbnk, for the first 6 years of our business, no one ever left. I didn't get a resignation letter. There were planned exits for certain people, and certain people didn't make it, but no one ever left. No one ever was just like, I want to go and work for somebody else. And for a business to last 6 years and that be the case, that was quite a long time. And also our first customers were some of our last customers, which I think is quite rare.
Very.
So the first customer I ever got, first B2B customer I ever got, was still my customer 11 years when I sold. And I was really proud of that, because we'd maintained that relationship and we'd really, really worked on building those bridges, and those business to business customers change over time. You know, managers come and go, the politics within these companies changes, but you kind of just work with them and weather it. So yeah, all about those people. And as we bring it into Helpbnk, I'm now working at the forefront of community, and it's all about people and how you turn up for them, how you make them feel, how they feel listened to, and is really important. And the earliest stages of your business, if you have someone you can soundboard against, it doesn't even necessarily have to be someone that knows a huge amount, but someone who will actively listen and actually take an interest in what you're saying, is half the battle. If you've got a sounding board that you can utilize.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really key.
And I think it's interesting that you've been through the whole business journey as well, right? Because we were talking earlier about how you make sure people in Helpbnk are good, or the right people to give information. But you've been through that, and you're leading from the front, literally in the way a good leader should, which is like, I've done this, I know exactly how you're feeling. And so I'm interested in how you knew it was the right time to sell the business, and then obviously step into, or even find Simon.
So the story of why we sold our business, there's a couple of things that happened at that period of time. Our growth trajectory within the business was pretty much just a straight line up. We were consistent in our growth every single year, and we grew at approximately 40% per year, year on year on year in terms of revenue. It was really strong. Which on a service-based business where your average job value is 50 quid is a really hard thing to do it consistently. But there is a tipping point to that, because at some point you need to have systems in place. You have to have managers who lead teams, and those sort of growing pains were something we weren't weathering particularly well. Our turnover plateaued at about 1.2 million, which was kind of like my limit of what I could manage with the teams that I got. And then we had a baby. So having a baby and running a business which was turning over £1 million and a team of, which I think was 14 at that time, and we were building a new build property as well, and managing a portfolio of other property, you almost become saturated. And it was like, well, I can continue to do this for a while, but it's probably not sustainable. And you also it becomes fairly dependent upon you. So one thing that I learned at the very early stages of my business is, if you're going to exit a business, try and exit at the top. Don't exit on the way down. And I was looking at the growth curve and I was like, well, we're beginning to plateau now, so we really need to be thinking about what's next. Either we need to really shift and change absolutely everything, structure of the teams, probably our pricing, probably our cost base, to be able to give us the margin to be able to recruit that central management, which wasn't directly contributing to revenue, or we sell. My plan was always to exit. So it got to that stage where we plateaued, got a baby, and I was like, probably a good time to do this. And when we'd done those like consistent 2-3 years at that same turnover, it literally went up, and it stopped when Charlotte was born and like literally leveled off. I was like, now's a good time to go, because the only time, probably from here, that line's probably going to go down, and then it becomes less valuable. So we made the decision to exit at that point, and it was exceptionally good timing. So
Why?
We planned to sell the business for about a year and a half, but my last day at work for the business was 29th of February 2020, and the world wasn't doing so great about 2 weeks later.
Yeah, it was doing absolutely terribly. So I think Simon Squibb has described you as the luckiest man in business, right? The luckiest sale in that year, at least.
The timing of the sale was incredibly lucky, and it's actually how I met Simon. So a mutual friend introduced us, because he was doing a podcast on Clubhouse called Luck in Business, and he called me up on that podcast to talk about the luck of the timing of that sale. And it was lucky. We had no idea that there was going to be a pandemic, and that's not why we were selling. But that business wasn't there 6 months later, because the customer base simply wasn't accessible anymore. No. You couldn't see them. So the business wasn't there.
So that was how you were introduced to Simon. Obviously that story, I guess, resonated quite well.
Yeah.
And from there, the rest is history, right? You've gone into Helpbnk, and you've got all these people who you're working with and for and helping, and it's all a bit exciting.
Yeah, Simon and I stayed friends, right? So Helpbnk wasn't born for another 2 and a bit years after that, but we kept in touch, and our kids are about the same age. We used to hang out and go for walks on the Common in London. We used to go around to the house and have barbecues. The kids would play. There was no preconception there. There was no, I want to get into business with this guy. It was just a friendship. And about 2.5 years later, he was just like, I'm putting a few people together. We're building this thing called Helpbnk where we're going to help at scale. I'd been helping a bit here and there in the ecosystem. He was like, do you want to invest? I was like, yep.
Yeah,
it's a real no-brainer at that point as well.
Yeah.
So
I've heard you talk, actually I've read some of the stuff you've said in the past, and one of the things you've said which I really like is about this notion of building smart, right? And I'm just interested in what that actually looks like today. When you're talking to people who are looking for help in Helpbnk, how would you define someone or help someone to build smart rather than whatever the alternative might be?
So I guess building smart is the opposite of just working really, really hard at a bunch of stuff. I think, again, it comes down to the access to information, the ability to focus on what you're really good at, identify the things that you're not, and then outsource the things that you can outsource. Focus on the mission, focus on the key things that drive either revenue, if that's what you're really after, or community generation, or whatever it is that's really key to the business, and then be able to push out those other roles to other areas, because you can hire people in all parts of the world in a way in which you couldn't do before. Access to talent has never been easier, in the same way that access to information is so ubiquitous now. But being really, really smart about where you focus your time, what you spend your time on, and what really moves the needle is something that also can be learnt. There's plenty of content out there that will show you how to do these things.
Yeah, absolutely, right. Like we keep coming back to, information is so cheap these days, but it's finding the bits that are going to help you at the right time, which is why I guess accountability has become so valuable and expensive in many ways. So when someone asks you, what should I be working on now, or what should I be trying to do in my business, what would you say the traits are between the ones who become successful from the people you work with and the ones that perhaps aren't as successful?
There are a number of traits that people will talk about that make successful entrepreneurs. The one thing that we talk about a lot is personal accountability. So being able to be accountable for your actions, looking a little bit internally and saying, okay, well, I'm not good at this, I am good at that. And when you've made a mistake, own it. It's a really key part. It's something that we value hugely internally in both Simon's brand and ours. And I think that being able to take that personal accountability of all of the actions that you take within your business and say, okay, well, I made a mistake there, I'm going to rectify it. I'm going to rectify it like this because I'm learning. You can make the same mistake twice, but you need to learn. That's one of the key traits, I think, when it comes down to... I've made so many mistakes across all aspects of all of the businesses that I've run. So many mistakes. But the point is you have to learn from each of them and try not to make them again.
Yeah. And I guess also, there's nothing more frustrating than someone who doesn't want to make a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine to not want to make mistakes, but no one wants to make mistakes, I don't think. I never want to, but you do, and then you recognize it and go, actually, okay.
You see the importance of it.
And you own it. And if you don't own it, and you're just like, well, no, that was definitely somebody else who did that, or, the supplier didn't do this, or the customer could have done this different. It's like, no.
Yeah.
What did you do? And how could you have done it differently?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think one of the things that I've certainly seen across successful, or people who are deemed successful in entrepreneurship, is that they are always so forthcoming with this notion that they have made so many mistakes. You never get a founder who goes, I nailed it first time.
No,
it doesn't happen. And so whilst you're not looking for mistakes, you're not trying to make mistakes, people just understand that you've got to just keep hitting the wall in different areas until you find the little trap door.
Very much.
I've seen you use a quote before. You've mentioned the Elon Musk quote, which was, move with extreme urgency, someone is right behind you.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in just your explanation of what that means to you and what that should mean to founders who hear the quote.
I think we've been working with a lot of people in Web3 recently. Part of the accelerator we've just run with Super Team puts 10 founders in a place where they're going to really move their business forward. And pace is something that is important now in a way that I don't think it was before. There are so many people who are trying to do lots of different things online, especially when you move into a digital environment. People are trying to move very, very fast. But also it costs money to stay still. If you are trying to do something and make it perfect before you launch it, there's a good chance you're going to spend a lot of money doing that. It's far easier to make something that doesn't look quite right, test it, let it break, change it, and iterate and go again, than it is to wait around for the perfect moment to launch anything. So move quickly, make sure that you've done what you can to the extent at which it works to a degree. Don't make it perfect, try it, and go again, because the quicker you iterate, the quicker you're going to get to where you need to be. Moving with urgency. Urgency is a really interesting word, because people can do things fast. But urgency has this connotation to it that if you don't get it done, something else is going to happen. And it could be that person who is nearby to you in a similar space is going to get to your market quicker or going to take a larger section of that market from you. But urgent doesn't mean careless. It just means do it fast and do it well. And I think urgency is a really underrated skill in entrepreneurship. To move with urgency.
Do you think there's an example within the business that you're currently building where you're showing extreme urgency?
Extreme urgency. I don't know the answer to that question.
Maybe I'll word it in a different way. What about, are there examples in the business you're currently building where you are testing and failing quickly in order to exploit an opportunity that you see?
I think the platform itself moves in a way that helps as many people as humanly possible, but without doing it in a way that causes any problems. And that's a really hard line to actually follow. We move in a way that's urgent when it comes to the development side of things, but without causing problems that break things, because you can build a platform and it can be insecure or it can fall over, but our uptime is north of 99%. So you end up with this product which I think we need to create urgency around building the mission so that actually more people can get the help that they need. So there's urgency there, and we are iterating in various different ways, from product to brand to marketing. It's not a particularly clear answer, but I think that the mission itself speaks to that.
Is there a personal mission that you're running alongside the business mission? There must be some crossover between what you and your wife and your family want to do in the long term and what the business wants to do. Because you're probably in a position where you didn't need to do this.
No.
So there must be that crossover.
That's what my wife says as well. No, we are in a position where I was dabbling, doing bits and pieces when I met Simon. And I was dabbling because I was bored, probably.
True.
I wasn't in a position where I really needed to do anything else at the time. And also, there's also that little part of you that you go into another startup. That's not an easy environment to be in, especially when it moves as fast as this. And the people are exceptional, and I do mean that. The people we work with are exceptional. And they move quick. And what I said to Simon at the very start was, I just want to work with smart people doing great things. And the personal mission that aligns with that is want to do great things. The financial element isn't there, not really. It's not something that I'm focused on. We have all that we need. I'm very fortunate insofar as my partner isn't money orientated. In fact, Simon actually said that was the reason he asked me to invest, is because he knew my partner and she wasn't money orientated. He said if she had been money orientated, he probably wouldn't have asked me to invest.
Well, why was it so big for him, do you think?
I think that he values the mission, and those sort of values are really, really important. The values of want to change the education system, want to help people, move with purpose, over and above financial incentives. That was really, really key from an investor profile. He's often said this.
Do you think, I wonder how important it would be as well to have second-time founders, ones that have hit their North Star. They've done something, they're probably financially free, and therefore it's not really about money to them. But also, they don't need that. They've maybe lost the ego of, I've got to prove myself.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. Proving yourself by having a sale is a really interesting concept. I think there's a lot of people that I speak to who have exited a business that probably in hindsight wouldn't say that it necessarily proved anything. There's a certain loss of identity that goes with an exit, and founders that I've spoken to have spoken about this. Simon himself, a guy called Nick who had a very large exit and lost part of himself during that process. I remember selling the business and thinking, I just don't want to go. I built this. I don't want to leave.
It was very normal for a founder to leave and then find themselves in some sort of depressive state, isn't it? Where they just feel like, what was the point? It was everything to me.
Exactly. And the money doesn't take that away, because the money isn't proportionally relevant. It's like, you worked on this thing, you were building something really important to you. And yes, okay, there was a byproduct of it, and the money is the byproduct, but the thing that you built is the important bit.
Yeah, well, that's interesting though, because in the business you have money, relevance, and purpose. So what Simon's done is proposed, well, there's no money, maybe there's equity or whatever, but there's definitely relevance and purpose.
Yep.
And it can fulfill the part that you think you've lost in yourself.
Exactly. And it allows you to build something. It wasn't necessarily the purpose of having a business or even being a founder or even being a co-founder with Simon. It's like, well, what is the purpose of the business itself? What is the mission that drives? And actually helping people with their business in a way that's accessible to them, because you could go and build a course running business, as we've said before, but you'd have to charge them for it. Yeah. But those people that need the most help are probably the ones that can't afford to pay. So let's help them in a really meaningful, sustainable way and build a system that allows for it. That's a hard thing to do, right? So if you don't charge anybody anything, how are you going to sustainably run the business? But we found a way to do that. And again, it goes back to the early stages of my business. I fortunately had a sounding board in my father, which helped me enormously. He didn't actually say a lot, he just listened to me talk. But to have that utility for me was really important. And to then go into a environment like Helpbnk, where either the community or individuals within Helpbnk or some of the systems that we use create that function for somebody else, it's really, really valuable, because people just need to be heard.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone needs to feel relevant, don't they? Depending on, doesn't matter what they're working on, they need to feel relevant. Yeah. The brand is helping people to achieve their dreams, and through that, I guess, find whatever their version of freedom is, or success. What does freedom look like to you now?
I think that shifts and changes. Freedom to me is threefold. And I've experienced this, and I think not many people do get to experience it, which is in itself a little sad. I would love people to have experienced this threefold level of freedom. One is financial. You don't have to worry about money all the time, and there are plenty of people out there who just literally focus and worry about money all of the time. Time freedom, where you don't have to be anywhere at a specific given time, and you're not beholden to anybody else. And geographic freedom is the one thing that I think a lot of people overlook. We found this after we sold the business. We had this threefold freedom. We didn't have to worry about money. We could be anywhere, because actually we were traveling in a camper van. And we had all the time in the world, because we'd created this exit, we'd created this situation. And part of my motivation for doing what we do is that I think more people should have the option to get to that point, or at least have the capacity to get there. Entrepreneurship does that because it creates a scalable way of earning. And if you can get to an exit, or you can build up revenue, or you can replace yourself in your role, you then have those options. And it's quite a rarity. Not many people have access to that.
Yeah, so few have access to that. So off the back of that, what do you think is the greatest mindset shift that an entrepreneur should try to have this year?
I work with a lot of people at the early stages of their business, and one of the best pieces of advice that was given to me in the earlier stages was work on the business, not in the business. And replacing the role that you hold within your small business, at least, I mean, scalable businesses are slightly different, but getting to the stage where you can make yourself redundant from the role that you're in, or replace yourself, that skill set, and don't make the business dependent upon you, that's where the magic is, because then you have something that will live without you. And yes, okay, you'll guide it, and yes, you'll be there every day, but if it sustains without you, then you have more ability to access that freedom. You haven't just bought yourself a slightly lower paying, more hours job, which is what a lot of entrepreneurs do.
And that's what everyone doesn't think is happening to entrepreneurs.
No, right.
Everyone thinks you're free. Look at everyone.
Yeah,
living.
Sure. You haven't bought yourself a 100-hour-a-week prison. No.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I will ask this question.
Go on then.
Adam, what is your dream?
That's not what I expected you to ask. I would have said a few years back it was to work with great people doing great things, and that's what I said to Simon when he asked me. That still goes, and that's true. But Simon also asked me this about a year ago, and I think dreams change. I think that at different stages of life you want different things out of life. At the early stages of the business, I just wanted enough money to be able to eat. That's slightly different to now. And I think in the future, it goes back to that freedom piece. I want to be able to experience that level of freedom again. And I want to do it for a sustained period of time. I have a very specific dream which I haven't really shared, so maybe I'll do that here. That dream is to travel from the Arctic to the Antarctic and take 5 years over it and film for content.
Wow.
So I want to build an off-road camper van. I want to do it myself. And then I want to take 5 years traveling through 2 continents, from peninsula to peninsula. But that is a plan for at least 10 years into the future. Once my daughter has done whatever she's going to choose to do next.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So,
That's such a good dream to have, though, because I think I love when people have the sort of philosophical dreams, but also a tangible dream is such an important thing, because it's something you could buy a camper van now and start tinkering with it, start building it up.
Absolutely.
It's something you could literally work on from day one.
And it's something I've thought about a lot. I never wanted to travel in a camper van. I never had this inclination to do a gap year and go and buy a beaten up VW bus. It was my partner again that she decided that we wanted to go and do this. But there's something about life on the road and meeting the people on the road that's really special, because you never know where you're going to be. You never know who you're going to meet. You never know what you're going to experience. And we had loads of these when we were traveling during 2020, 2021. Just random things that used to happen. And you don't get that within the consistency of everyday norms. You don't get that when you go to work and come home and cook dinner and watch Netflix. You couldn't be less on the conveyor belt, could you? No. And what's the beauty of that is that you meet people who have spent their entire lives doing this. There are people that just travel consistently. We met a family when we were on the beaches in Tarifa overlooking Gibraltar in southern Spain in January 21. And for everyone who remembers what January 21 was like, it was pretty awful. But they decided to jack in their jobs or go remote, at least digitally remote, and do what they could. He was a startup founder. But he had his 2 teenage girls with him. And they were studying for exams. But they'd only study in the mornings because they were kite surfing and rock climbing in the afternoon. And that's how they'd chosen to live their life. They lived in a van and they moved around. But they made a choice to just go and do this.
Yeah, and they're not optimizing for getting into university, they're optimizing for life and entrepreneurship.
And all these skills. And their dad was an entrepreneur and he was a startup founder, and he was teaching all of these sort of life skills that goes alongside it. And they could do anything. Literally anything, yeah. That's the mindset shift.
There are people listening to this who will be thinking about starting a business. So they are literally thinking about what their dream will be and how they can go into it. And you're working with these people all the time. Yep. So what would one piece of advice be that you could leave them to go away and ponder about now that will help them move the needle in their favor in the rest of 2025?
The key piece of advice I would say is probably just start. Start in some small way, and find out whether or not you like it. Entrepreneurship is hard, and it's something that maybe we don't talk about enough. It's not an easy road. It's a difficult thing to do. But if you lead with that passion piece and you're doing something that you really care about, then the chances are you're going to be more successful than most. But the only way to find out is to get started. Do a bit here and there. Spend an hour a day. I'm pretty sure everyone has an hour a day. Stop watching Netflix. And start. Learn a bit. Get it wrong. Break stuff. And then go again. But having a dream and starting a dream are 2 different things. And I think the key is to take those first small steps and see what happens.
I love it. I think it's so poignant that information and ideas come cheap or free.
Yeah.
Actually taking the step is the hard bit.
We talk a lot about execution. Ideas and talking about things are fine, but it's all in the execution. Helpbnk is a very unique place in terms of a place to work, I think, because we don't measure hours. We don't measure holiday. We don't measure time at desk. We're fully remote globally. It's all based upon execution and results. And it becomes very, very obvious who is doing what. So,
Adam, where can people find you online if they've liked what they've heard?
best place for me is probably LinkedIn. I'm not doing TikTok yet, despite Simon's temptations to try and make me do those things. But LinkedIn's best. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to that episode. I hope you enjoyed it just as much as I enjoyed speaking to that guest. If you scroll down now, you will find a link to our Healthy Hustle newsletter. There's more than 10,000 people receiving the newsletter every week, and it helps break down how to become a top podcast guest. It will also break down exactly what this guest that you've just listened to did to create such a great episode that you've just listened to. I hope it's helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.